Hello and welcome everyone to Spherical Luminosity's YouTube live session. Today we're going to be talking about getting into flow, which can feel hard when there's so much going on. You'll notice that my background's a little different. Chris and I are currently in Hawaii for a couple of weeks before we go to the Austin retreat to see some of you live, which we're very excited about. So you'll see that the setting is in transition as Chris sets up our temporary studio. So if you wouldn't mind, some of you have already started to do it, which I really appreciate. If you could comment in the chat your first name and where you're from, so I can see you and say hello. We see, so my screen that I'm looking at is tiny. So I see Marika and Jason from Colorado. Thank you for joining. And of course, Mary and Michael are here. And so is Jason from Colorado, I think. And John DeMoss, you have been to almost every one of these. Welcome back from Indiana. And then we have someone from, it was Marlene from the Redwood Forest. That's really cool. And there's Marty and Liz Malcolm from New Zealand, Brigitte from Ontario, another Kiwi, there's Pam, and let's see, Anita as well. So thank you all for joining. For those of you who are here and those of you who I didn't get to say hi to personally, excited to have you here. And it's kind of a funny topic, the getting into the flow, since last time we had such tech issues. So that will weave in, I'm sure, into our discussion today. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Cheong. Like I said, many of you know me and some of you don't. So for those of you who are new, I help to catalyze awakening and a rise in human consciousness by releasing people's blocks at what I refer to as frequency level, amplifying your awareness of the divine within so you can recognize and live the abundance and limitlessness of your true nature as infinite, indestructible consciousness. This is your birthright, and the time for humanity to awaken to this possibility is now. So for those who are brand new to frequency work and don't know much about it, I can only give a really brief overview in the amount of time I have. So after this, if you want to learn more, I'd recommend checking out episodes 176, and 154 of my podcast, Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, on this very same channel. So again, that was episodes 176, and 154. So the first two episodes, 1 and 176, are all about the fundamentals of frequency work. And 176 is a reboot of frequency work fundamentals, which Fiona, who is my new co-host, and I just did recently, because it'd been a couple of years since we've given it. And episode 154 is the top 5 most important things about frequency work. Okay. And if you're really wanting to know more, you can also check out episode 131, where we discuss the top 18 questions we get here at Spherical Luminosity. There's also the How It Works section of the website, sphericalluminosity.com, if you want to learn more about what we do specifically. And our website is still in process of being upgraded. We put a lot of work into it. So if you haven't checked it out in a while, there's some really cool new stuff, a lot of more information. So if you're curious about it, check that out. So today, what we're going to be discussing, like I said, is getting into flow, which can be easy to do if we're like on vacation, we don't have a lot to think about, we're walking on the beach, sipping our whatever wonderful drink that we have, easy to be in flow. But the question is, how do you get into flow when things are challenging, when things are happening very quickly, when there's a lot of breakdown, a lot of emotional stress from not maybe yourself or maybe from yourself, but from others around you as well. So in any case, we had such good feedback from last time. We are going to bring Fiona back in to help make this a very lively conversation, I'm sure, knowing Fiona. She is my co-host for Mastering Your World Through Frequencies. If you haven't seen her before, if you haven't checked out the podcast, you will recognize her face if you do go check it out after this. So we're going to bring on Fiona so we can have a discussion. And then we will get to your Q&A. Hello, Fiona, all the way from San Miguel de Allende.
Hey.
Cool.
Yeah, well, it was interesting listening to it because when you were speaking, I'm like, shit, that's the questions I was going to ask. Especially after the last attempt. But, we've been having discussions over the last couple of weeks, and first of all, like, why is flow so important? And then, like you say, when you're in everyday life, like, you gotta get the kids to school. First of all, you gotta get up, you gotta make the breakfast, you gotta make the lunch, you gotta get kids to school. You gotta walk the dog, you gotta get the shopping. Where's flow in there? How do you get flow in there? How do you fit flow in there? And it's such a huge topic, and we all want a piece of it because, well, I think that it makes life easier. Hopefully, you can
Mhm.
explain that. But, like, how do we capture that essence of flow in the daily living? And how do we make it
Mhm.
happen? How do we accommodate it? How do we recognize it? How do we know we're
Mhm.
in it? It's such a
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of
Can you
questions.
answer all them questions right now, please?
I'll do my best. I think I might forget a couple though. Okay, so I think one of your first questions was, why is flow important?
Mhm.
I think was one of your questions.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping you guys can still see me. Yes, there we go. So you guys, if you could bear with us, we're not in our studio in San Miguel. We're in my mom's condo. And the internet is Hawaiian internet, which means that it's, you know, a little wobbly sometimes. But hopefully you guys can still hear me. Okay. So flow is actually closer to what I would call our um, a state of being that is really our primary state when we're not embodied. Okay. So, because when you're disembodied, infinite, indestructible consciousness, there's no sense of linear time. There's no sense of like you have to get something done at this time and get to work and achieve your outcomes and whatever, whatnot. And we don't have a sense of scarcity, meaning we know that we are co creating our realities and we can do it in a way that we're very empowered. And we remember that and we know it viscerally, unlike how we are here in our embodiment, where we forget that. So when we're in that state, we're in this state where we're in the divine unfolding and there's not any friction with that divine unfolding because you're in that state of flow. There is no, like I said, pressure from linear time. We don't have minds that tell us we have to do certain things by certain times. There's no sense of scarcity of time. We are in the eternal now, which is the eternal present moment. So everything is very infinite. So there's no pressure really. You're just, like I said, in that experience of the divine unfolding. Okay. So when we experience, I gave you all that backstory for a reason. When we're in the experience in our embodiment, when we enter flow, it's like a remembering of that state. That's why it feels so good. And when we're in that state of flow, which to me, okay, so just it's helpful sometimes to have definition. Flow is when you're in the flow of the unfolding without any friction on your part, right? So there's no resistance, there's no expectation, there's no yearning, there's no lack. You're in the space of almost like expectant curiosity where you're like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. But there's no you know what I mean? It's not like a heavy expectation. You're just sort of curious to see what's going to happen. And because you're in this open state of curiosity and you're in neutrality without expectation, and you're also in surrender, all this magic can come in because you're not blocking it. Okay, by thinking, okay, this needs to get done, that needs to happen. If I don't have this, then that can't happen. Like your linear mind doesn't get into the way, I should say. And that is when you start to experience that sort of magic. When you meet the person at the last minute who you weren't supposed to, and you end up going on this walk and you meet somebody else and they tell you a story and it takes you to the next thing that is supposed to unfold for you, for example, right? So you're in this space where like the non-linear magic of the universe can come in, support and surprise you. Okay, so that to me is what flow is. That's what it can look like in the physical. It's important because, well, I guess it depends on how important magic is to you. How much you like that. If magic's not important to you, probably flow is not that important. But in addition to magic, what it is a sense of ease because you're in this space where you're participating. It's not like you're not like lying there, like a lump on a log or anything. You're actively following, but you're not trying to create a particular outcome, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like it's funny to think of like an act of surrender, but it is kind of like an act of surrender because you are doing something to continue to follow, but you're not trying to get to an outcome. So that state of surrender, neutrality, or what I would call active surrender, is important because that also mirrors the state that you need to be in order to ascend in terms of your vibrational level the fastest. Okay, so it has to do also with your ability to ascend in your vibration level. So to me, all of those things kind of weave together. I'm talking about them as if they're separate, but they all mirror each other. So flow is important because it reminds us of who we truly are. It starts to cultivate that muscle of active surrender and neutrality. It brings in magic and synchronicity, and um, the non-linear force of the universe comes in to transpire to bring in all kinds of opportunity that you probably could not foresee with your linear mind. So to me, that is why flow is important. Now you asked a cascade of like 10 million questions, but I answered one. So you want to ask me what the other one is after that?
No, that was fairly impressive now for that one answer, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But while you're talking, just put my questions aside because as you were talking, sometimes when I hear these kind of descriptions, there feels like there's a separation between linear time and then this universal time, right? Or
Mhm,
non-time. You know,
mhm,
however we want to describe anything other than linear time.
mhm,
And from my experience, it feels like the active, it's like an active participation in surrendering and not pushing your will into something, right? So, but linear time somehow is woven into that because that's the active part, right? In this dimensional space time frequency that
mhm,
our iterations are in, right?
mhm.
So I guess my question is, how do we stop getting caught up? Because like, when do you know to step back and go, wait, hang on, this is when I need to sit back, surrender. I've done everything I can do right now. And
Mhm,
now I have to recognize this is my will pushing this. What are the
mhm.
signs? This is kind of part of my other questions. What are the signs? When do we know? Okay, back off, take the pedal off, come
Yeah,
back in. And would we use like the tools? Say, come back in. Where's my toes? Where's my heels? Where's my right hip? Where's my left hip? You know, and breathe into just being neutral, like you say.
yeah,
And so I guess the real question is, when do we back off? How do we know when to back off? You know,
yeah,
to allow
yeah.
flow.
Sure. So, um, so I'm going to answer your question in a slightly different way. So one is I'm going to answer the question, how do you know when you're not in flow? Okay.
Hmm.
Then I'm going to answer, how do you know when you're in it? And then how do you get into it? Okay. And if I forget one of those things, please remind me. So, okay. What you were talking about is really important. Okay. Because there is a distinction between linear time and what you call non time, or I call the eternal now.
Hmm.
Okay. The ever expanding present moment, which is infinite. Okay. All of everything on spirit level exists on the level of the eternal now. If you do not know the difference between the two forms of time, then I do encourage you to watch episode 80 of Mastering Your World Through Frequencies called What is Time? And there's another one that I think is, I think, I can't remember the episode number, but it's on the new frequency resonance of time. That also would be really important to watch to understand what time is. But in any case, the reason that you feel that spaciousness of flow is because you're sort of bridging when you have these moments that seem sort of magical and expansive and all that nonlinear magic comes in. The reason it feels like that is because you're in the infinite abundance of the eternal now. Okay, so meaning you're in physical time because here you are in your day, walking the dog or going to get groceries or whatever it is that you're doing, because you're in linear time, having the experience of the embodiment. And at the same time, there's something that happens which causes your vibration level to rise. And then you start to experience eternal now, okay? Or that higher level vibrational order of that form of time where everything is infinite and all possibilities seem open because they are. So when you're in that form of time, the eternal now, that is when you can feel that feeling of flow. Okay, so just to talk about time. So that's what flow is. You're really tapping into the infinite abundance of the eternal now. And for those of you who were at the San Miguel de Allende retreat, that's what we focused on, right? How to bring that infinite abundance of that eternal now into the linear time aspect. Okay, so
Okay,
now
can I
to answer
just
the question, like,
quickly
how do
interrupt?
you know? Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, so interrupting you just a little bit there, right?
Sure.
Just at that moment where you're experiencing the eternal now, how does that look like in our life? Like,
Yeah.
what happens? What happens?
Yes.
Like, is that the
Sure.
synchronistic moments? Is
Yes.
that when you're just thinking about something and then whoops, next 5 minutes in walks the person you were just thinking about? Is that
Yeah.
the moments
Yeah.
of being in
Exactly.
the
Or
okay?
like things like exactly what you said, or in walks the person, or you get a phone call for them, or you think to yourself, um, geez, I really need to order this thing and you keep forgetting to do it. And then all of a sudden someone's gifted it to you or sends you an email with the link exactly. You have to search for it. The link's right there. You just have to click on it, right? Because they're like, hey, I thought of you and here's this link. All those moments that are synchronistic like that are when you start to be in flow. When you to be in flow requires a bump in your frequency resonance. So what I'll say is, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So how you know you're not in flow is when you're completely in your mind. Okay. So you're only thinking about all the things you got to do, all the things you haven't done. You're stressed about it. Time feels scarce and you don't feel like you can get to all the stuff that you got to get done. And you're feeling slightly overwhelmed. Why? It's because all of these things are derived from a scarcity of time, which only exists in linear time. When you're in the eternal now, truly, time is very expensive. There's no need to grab at time because you're in the infiniteness of the eternal now. Make sense? So when you're in flow, you don't feel scarce. You feel like, geez, I mean, everything's sort of unfolding. It's just perfect. Okay. And I realize for some people who don't ever feel that way and are always scrambling for time, that might be probably very irritating. However, when you are experiencing that, it really feels that way. That scarcity of time really does drop away. And as somebody who used to feel scarcity of time a lot, and it's still something that I currently work on, is that expansion happens and literally the scarcity of time drops away. Okay, so scarcity of time is an indication that you're not in flow. When you're thinking a lot, you're not in flow. When you're um, being pulled out of your center, okay, in other people's urgencies, stresses, worries, fears, you're not in flow. These all indicators that you're not in flow. When you're in flow, sorry guys, my little earpiece. I have like really weirdly small ear canals, and so these things never stay in. Probably TMI, but I'm sorry. But that's why I keep fussing with the earpiece. In any case, so so how you know when you're in flow, it's when it feels like you don't need to do anything and you're in that state of expectant curiosity because all this synchronicity is showing up and it's kind of like, whoa, how's this happening? Right? And you kind of are just like a little bit in awe of that magic unfolding. Or you could experience gratitude, or you could experience like majesty or awe. So, for example, if you are somewhere on a hike, for example, and you come unexpectedly across a ridge and there's this beautiful view, that can be a really beautiful time when you're in flow. Or if you're in a natural space and something pulls you really strongly into the frequency resonance of the earth, because that's so firmly in the present moment, that can pull you into the eternal now. And so, just as a little example, for a few weeks ago, we got to go to this giant cactus, let's call it area. I don't know what else to call this place, preserve, I guess. And some of these cacti are like 250, 300 years old. Okay, really, really old and taller than me. and really huge around. And they have male cacti that are solo cacti, and then they have, and they're, well, they look kind of like penises, to be honest. They're like tall, and I'm sorry, they do. And then the female cacti are very round, and they're clustered. And when they create baby cacti, they create like a cluster. Okay. So anyway, we stumbled across this cluster of this mama cactus, this grandmama cactus, and she was gorgeous. All this huge round cacti around her. And there was a little space in the very center of it where you could sit, which was kind of a remarkable thing given how thorny they are. Anyway, when I got the opportunity to sit like in the embrace of this grandmama cactus, the feeling of it was just like this, like almost like a pull right into like the eternal now, like right into the Mother Earth frequencies, a ton of life force, and then right into the eternal now. So all of a sudden I'm in flow. My mind stopped. For me personally, I'm not saying this is everyone's experience. For me, mind shut off, and I was just staring at the sky, looking at the clouds, feeling the tree, not the trees, the air, because there are no trees there. Feeling the air, feeling the earth, that type of thing. You know, I'm just in the experience of being there without thinking about my experience of being there. So to me, I would categorize that as flow. Okay, so that's how you know that you're in flow, if you get to be in this special place. So your third question was, sorry guys, was how do you get into flow when you're running around and you've got a million things to do, and there's work and the family and people and deadlines and etc. How do you get into flow
Because it sounds
when
like,
you've got all the stuff that you got to do?
sorry.
Okay. So remember, and a lot of people, well, I'm sorry, just backing up. A lot of people associate being in that flow state of being at ease, because you are at ease. And they think of it as like almost like a vacation. You know what I mean? Because it is kind of like a vacation from your regular life in a way, because you're in this expansiveness. And so they think that they have to put themselves into situations like take themselves away, you know, to a vacation or whatnot in order to experience it, to experience that kind of ease, that kind of luxury of time. Okay. What I'd like to just say is that to experience flow in your everyday takes mindfulness and practice, and it's totally achievable. Okay. So the mindfulness is to notice when you're not in flow. That's the first thing. So the awareness that you're not in flow is very key. A lot of people don't even know that they're not in flow. They just are caught up in their what they got to do, right? And for some of you, by the way, when you're writing or very focused at work, you're in a kind of flow state, actually, because you're very focused. Does that make sense? A lot of people will think of work as antithetical to flow, meaning you can't be working in flow. That's not true. You could be, depending on what kind of work you do, you can get into flow doing work. It simply has to do with your vibrational state. Is your vibration state high enough that you can bridge into the eternal now? So that you can be in that space where you're either very focused on a particular thing that you're doing and you're just in it, right? So it doesn't matter if you're woodworking, writing, I don't know. Some people, I guess, can Excel spreadsheet and kind of get in flow. I don't know. I guess I'm sure it's possible. It's not me, but I'm sure someone can. You know, organizing things, like some people get really into it. You can be doing that and be in flow, actually, because what you're doing is, even though you're using your mind, you're in this focused state where you're not controlling. Does that make sense? You're just in the flow of doing whatever it is that you're focused on without, and you're very present doing it. So it has to do with your vibrational rate and how present you are in that moment as you are doing it. Does that make sense? So those two things must be obtained. So let me just recap that, because that might be confusing. One is to be aware that you're not in flow, meaning that you're scattered in your mind, not present, not in your body, etc. Two, to then be aware that to raise your frequency resonance or your vibration level, however you do that. Okay. So it might mean that you need to shift gears for a moment and go stand out. So even if you're in the middle of doing your dishes or whatever, if you need to, go stand outside and put your feet on the grass and just breathe in the sunlight. It could be that you become very present as you're doing the dishes. Like, whoa, I love this warm soapy water. This is amazing, right? You could, right? You don't have to change. Some people need the change, some people don't. But it's to come into the body present in that moment and very embodied. Okay. And then as your vibrational state rises, okay, then you can enter that flow state if you get into the present moment enough. Now the thing is to watch your mind, because the harder you try to get to flow, the more annoyingly elusive it will become, unfortunately, because the mind really can, meaning the obsession of trying to get to a certain state will only drop your resonance. Does that make sense? I'm going to contrast that to what I said in terms of being concentrated, right? So if you're woodworking, you're obviously using your mind because you're woodworking and you're trying not to cut off your fingers, clearly, but your mind is engaged, but your mind is focused and you're very present in that moment. You're not scattered all over the place wondering what you need to do at lunch. Do you see what I'm saying? So I just want to contrast those two states of mind, so to speak. I don't know if that was helpful.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing as well is the difference between being so present because you have to be focused on the task, as opposed to the mind's creating a story and it's pulling you off with this story, and that you're not present anymore. You've run off with the mind with this little scary tactics that start to make you feel like your whole world is gonna fall apart if you don't start doing. That's how it feels like for me, anyways. And when I get like that, like you say, the tools, like for me, it would be, okay, I need to get outside and walk. I need to walk and just get this energy that's built up inside of me. That's the mind's convinced, convinced the body, you gotta get this now. Or breath, to use the breath. Because often that is literally a physiological process, right? That switches the body from this fight or flight into this, right, relax, whoa, drop, come away from that mind. And I think that's what I'm hearing you're saying, right? Okay, everyday life can be more flow. We're human, right? We're gonna jump into the story. I think that's what you're saying. But then we have the tools to pull us back. We can be focused. We can be focused on the task. We can complete the task, but we're present with it. We're not running away with the mind and its story or what needs to happen, should happen, how it should happen, when it should happen. Oh my God.
Yeah. And the other thing too is to know that it's an internal state, right? As you said, and so for example, you could be in traffic, right? So now let's just imagine it's a stressful day and you're trying to get home from work because you got to get to the grocery store to make dinner. And then you got to pick up somebody, right? So there's like a whole laundry list of things you got to do, right? And now you're in traffic. So now it's stressful because you're in traffic and you're late, right? And you're like, oh God, I have to and like the phone's starting to ring because people are like, where are you? All that stuff, and you're in traffic. Okay. So in that moment, you could get caught in the mind of like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. Like, why isn't this traffic moving? What's happening? You can get caught in that story and like dealing now with the people that you got to manage. So in that moment, however, even though you're stuck in traffic, you could choose to, okay, I'm going to become really present now. However you do that. So maybe, like you said, it's you become aware of the space between the steering wheel and your chest. You become aware of the roof around you, the top of the car, for example. You become aware of between that and the rest of your body. You become aware of the space between your toes, etc. Right? So you're spatially orienting and becoming present. And now you're doing things like looking at the sky because you can see it. Even if you're in Manhattan, stuck in traffic, you can look up and see the sky, right? Or you look at a tree or whatever's happening. Yeah? And so what you're doing is pulling yourself into the present moment by using, as you say, the tools. And when that happens, your frequency resonance starts to rise. And as that happens, you can start to bump into this moment of the eternal now starting to open to you, where you start to go into flow. And then what happens is things can start to shift. All of a sudden, traffic gets diverted. Things start to come in. Somebody who said they needed to have you pick them up at a certain time changes, and they're now late. So it's perfect. You get there at the right time. Do you see what I'm saying? Flow can enter at any moment, even if we're starting from a point of stress. So it's not like you need to go outside of yourself to find flow. Does that make sense? It has to do with your internal state of accessing flow so that you can know that you have control of it, really. Okay, it has to do with having trust, which a lot of people have challenge with, but having trust that you can come into that state of presence and that you can raise your frequency resonance. And without getting into the stress, the worry of all the stuff that's happening because you're late, you're like, I am connected in this moment to the all that is. Now, that's a very far leap, okay, from like the stress of like down here of like, I'm trying to like get to somebody and a whole bunch of different things I got to do. But you can get yourself there, right? As you use the different tools, becoming present in the body, spatially orienting, looking at something natural. You can imagine somebody that you love. You can imagine a place that you love. You can imagine, I don't know, whatever it is that, you know what I mean? So you can start to feel love. Then you can start to feel gratitude. Now, all these things start to raise your frequency resonance and get you to that place of the eternal now, which then is where flow enters. And then you can shift things actually pretty quickly, which is really kind of amazing. So, yes, that is something you can do. I tried to put my earpiece in subtly, but that didn't work. I'm trying.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
yeah, the take home is ultimately we have that choice, right? That's what I'm hearing you
Mhm,
say. It's a choice. No matter where we are, where we're sitting, standing, in what situation we're in, we have this moment to surrender. Like it sounds like that you're saying surrender the
mhm,
will that thinks it can control
mhm.
or is being or feeling like you're being controlled.
Yeah,
Surrender using the tools, whatever you've got to hand, and
yeah,
just choose to be present, fully
yeah,
present, and then
yeah,
allow that flow. Because, like you say, when you do, I mean, I think we've all experienced it at some point when we do and we do surrender and then shift into this space or non-linear eternal now, however it's described, magic does happen, right? It's
yeah. It really can.
phenomenal what can
Yeah,
happen. You just can't
yeah,
make this stuff up in your head.
yeah, yeah, totally. And the thing about all of this is right now, there's a lot to worry about, okay, for a lot of people. And so they're worried about what might happen, which is a future outcome that doesn't exist except for in your own mind.
Mhm.
And the more you worry about it, the more you're creating it. So I know that might freak some people out. They're like, "Oh my god, now I have to watch every single thought." I'm not saying that. I'm saying the more you can come into the present moment, the more you can just be here with what's happening. To be like, "Okay, so I am worried, I am afraid. Okay, I'm gonna allow myself to have that fear." Right? And let it move through. That will be, and you can use different tools like, EFT, or I use EFT a lot. I have in the past, to tap things out of the nervous system. A lot of people like a system called Body Talk. A lot of people use the motion code or the body code. I know Marty Sayers, who's one of the people participating, he's a facilitator of that. All these different tools can help you move emotion out of your nervous system. Find one and use it, and then you can be in that present moment and not be afraid of the emotions. Make sense? And then you can bring yourself, it's a practice. I mean, this is a practice. It's not like a one off. You
Mhm.
keep doing it over and over and over again. And then what will happen is, at least what I've noticed for myself, is as we do the work and as your frequency resonance rises, it gets faster and easier to pull yourself into the present moment, to be in awe of what can shift and how quickly. You're like, whoa, that just happened, and with this expectant curiosity that something is about to shift because nothing is static
Mhm.
and there is nothing that is exactly predictable, So we like to think that there is, but there really isn't. And so if you have that within you, then things can shift much faster than you think.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could keep on chatting and trying to poke away, but I'm pretty sure there's people on this call that have plenty questions, probably
Yeah.
far more than what I could ask. So maybe it's time to shift across to them.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take some Q&A. Thank you, Fiona, for your awesome questions. I hope you guys are enjoying this new format. Okay, so we're waiting for the question to show. Okay, is it possible to create flow even when up against a deadline? For example, packing up house and moving country. Yes, absolutely, because it's an internal state. So it's to become very immersed in the packing up your stuff. So you're just in it. Now, we just packed up all our stuff and moved out of country and sold our house and have been setting up another house. So I'm very familiar with this. So the thing is to know that you can find it and you can do it even in like the mundane. So, like purging all your clothes out of your closet or packing up the toiletries and realizing you can't bring some of them or whatever it is. You can be very in that moment. Do you have to be in flow all the time? Should you have the expectation that you'll be in it all the time? No. So I think if you give yourself permission to be like, okay, well, sometimes I'm going to be in flow and sometimes I won't, that makes things easier. Part of the mind's expectation that we should be in flow and that what you're in is bad creates more resistance to what is and then keeps you out of the present moment and out of the eternal now. So even though you're probably tired from packing countless boxes and weeding through all the stuff that you have and wishing you didn't have as much crap, we certainly did. You're like, why do we have this much stuff? You know, but whatever it is going on for you, it is even in those moments of simply like taking the stuff to Goodwill or taping up the boxes, you can become very present in that moment and just be in the um, oddly, what I will say, call it, is like pleasure of that being present in that moment, simply of the boxes, and to be in that appreciation of the becomingness, the unknown of that moment. Like you don't know what it's going to be like when you get wherever you're going. So it's more like you're in this really sweet moment of the becoming that is not yet known. And so even if that moment lasts for 2 seconds or less, you still have this moment that allows for an expansiveness that wouldn't be there if you were just in your mind thinking, oh my God, I've got to reach a deadline. Okay? So hopefully that is helpful. But yes, it is possible. We know because we have just done it. And I'm not suggesting you're never going to experience stress. A lot of people think that, um, you know, they want to be in flow because they don't want to experience friction or stress or challenge. But the thing is, part of strengthening is to know that you can move into these states of expansion, of flow, of higher level resonance, despite the stress that's happening around you. So sometimes, uh, oh, okay. Chris is showing a question because exactly that. Um, the person asking, it's tough to do when you're stressed out. The stress response takes over the body mind during those times. Are there any practical tools to enter flow? Yeah. So if you're noticing that your body is stressed out and you're having a stress response, I know that Fiona herself has had this journey herself. It's to really vigilantly come present in the body and to focus on your breath. And sometimes I've found it helpful to hold something like a stone or a crystal that you like a little one that you carry with you, and you just hold the thing. Okay. And it's almost like this thing that anchors you into yourself and into your body. So you just hold the little, I don't know, whatever it is, like coin, crystal, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, honestly, whatever, something, but something natural. Okay. So not like, I don't know, a microchip or something that you be carrying around a microchip, but you know what I'm saying? Something that's of the earth, preferably. And you can just hold that. And that pressure of it in your hand can bring your attention to the hand and to your breath, and you can start to govern your breath. And all you have to think about is breathing. Okay, inhale. I'm going to hold my breath for 2 seconds. Okay, I'm going to exhale. All right, I'm going to breathe in again. And this time I'm going to breathe into my fingertips. Okay, hold for 3 seconds or whatever it is, so that you can start to realize that you have control. Okay. You could also do something like rubbing your fingertips together, you just to feel the friction between your fingertips. And you're like, okay, I feel the friction within my fingertips. All right. So I'm bringing my attention here. I'm going to slow my breath down, whatever it is that you need to do as a physical thing for you to start to have control over something. I say the breath because it's like one of the easiest things for you to govern, okay, which is of your body. So to be aware of the breath and say like, okay, I can hold my breath for 3, and then I can release my breath in 5. I'm going to hold my breath. I'm going to inhale for 4, or whatever it is, okay, to help you understand that you're breathing, you're in control of this process, and that all you have to focus on in this moment is your breath. And you can feel all the other stuff happening, like the sweating, the heart rate accelerating, the whatever from the stress, but you focus on the body and the breath, and you keep doing it. And what will happen is things will, because you're becoming so present and you're so diligent with it, the stress response starts to shift because you've acknowledged it, and you're also like in control of an aspect of it, meaning your own breath. And I don't know, Fee, if you want to talk to that more a little bit.
Yeah, I used to get anxiety attacks, and they're different from a panic attack. And or have I got the other way around? I always get it reversed. Anyways, it used to be exactly like he described. The physical response of the body. Yeah, I actually felt like I was having a heart attack, and I actually ended up in the hospital convinced I was having a heart attack. And it whatever the reason was for this, I used it as a strengthening tool in the end. When I stopped letting my mind take over and became present using the tools. So I had a coin. I would carry a coin, and I would rub the coin between my thumb and my finger. I would use the breath. Just use the breath. It's the strongest tool other than spatial coordination that I had in my power at any time. And by holding the breath after I'd inhaled, and holding it and exhaling really slow, and then holding it again, it just physiologically, like I say, switches. And then I could do the spatial coordination. And it really is, it comes down to strengthening and choosing that. Okay, am I going to be a victim of this, or am I going to say, right, this is tough right now. I'm absolutely petrified. I'm terrified. I don't know what's happening, but I'm just going to breathe my way through this, and I'm going to keep doing this spatial coordination. It's like that jump. It's like a quantum leap, as you've said in the past, Karen. It's like that moment. Do you want to stay where you are, or now you have this amazing opportunity to use what's in front of you right now? You're at your maximum, or I can't take this anymore, and flip it and make it a success story. And it just jumps the frequency resonance of your field. It's an amazing gift. I know that's going to be horrible to hear, but it really is an amazing gift. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. And for some of you, if you can, so for example, Angel Grace, if you are breathing and you're like, okay, the fear or the stress is right here. Okay, that's where I feel it strongest. It's right in my stomach. Put your hand on that place and breathe into your hand. So you're acknowledging the body. So you're using your body, you're becoming present with it, you're acknowledging what's happening, you're using your breath. Okay, some people need a little bit extra. If you do, you can do that as well. It's a systematic thing you can do to help you realize, okay, I'm just going to breathe through this with my attention on the space that feels the stress, the anxiety, the worry, whatever. And then it will eventually dissipate, okay? Or it will move, in which case you do it again. Right? And so what will happen is, because you're acknowledging, recognizing it, and being with it, it'll start to shift. Okay? Because what you'll start to recognize in the body is that I've got it. Like I've got it. I'm with it. I'm not trying to run away from it. I'm with it. And because I'm present with it, things will shift. So it's kind of remarkable. Okay, we have time for great question. We have time for one more question, and then we're going to go into the GFC. Okay. How can we tell when another person's energy is pulling us out of flow? Rather stay in our own mind chatter or distraction? Oh, I see. Well, when you're not holding your space. Okay, so for people who aren't familiar with holding your space, I would really highly recommend watching episode 121, I think, called Steady She Goes, Holding Your Space. So if you haven't watched that yet, Kim, you may want to, just in terms of knowing when your space has been pressed into. So it's difficult to be honest. It's very difficult to tell sometimes when you have a lot of distortion. I'm not saying this is true for you, but for most people, when they begin, it can be hard to tell because they have so much distortion, and some people like onboard other people's negative patterns so much they don't know the difference between what's their space and other people's frequencies because you haven't had enough clarity to know the difference. To be honest, okay, so it can be harder to tell. All right. One tell, though, that you could use is if, for example, you were in a totally fine mood, okay, before you started communicating with the person, like you were fine, like not great, not bad, just fine. And then all of a sudden, as you're interacting with the person, or even thinking about interacting with them, or receiving a text from them, or thinking about their response to something that you have to tell them or that you want to share, you start to feel bad. Okay, like you start to feel anxious yourself, stressed, worried, fearful, potentially angry, whatever. Okay, like you get kind of stressed out about it. When you have that kind of response, it's probably because you're not holding your space well enough with someone else. Okay, so that's how one way that you can tell. The other is if this would be an after, if you have been with somebody either on the phone or in person or on a Zoom call, and afterwards you feel very, very, very tired. That is another way of knowing that someone is in your space. Or if you just start to feel very preoccupied about them. So you're very worried about them. You're worried how they're going to be. You're stressed out. Now you're kind of like, do you see, like you're now like very consumed with making sure that they're okay. That can be, depending on who the person is, what the other person's doing, that can be another way of knowing that they're pressing into your space. And then if you're having conflicting feelings of needing to like save them or take care of them or whatever, and even though you have other things that you need to do and it probably will be a hardship for you, that's another way of knowing that they're pressing into your space. If you feel like you can't say no, um, for to somebody, that's another possible sign. It depends on the circumstance, obviously, but that is another possible sign. So that is how you know. And when all of those things I just described, what happened? Your mind went off. Like you started worrying, you started thinking about like how you could fix them, what the challenge was going to be. You were thinking about things in the future. You were starting to feel bad because of something that hasn't even happened yet. Do you see what I'm saying? You're no longer present in the moment. You're completely in a future time that doesn't exist. It's something you've created in your head. Okay. So if that is happening, that is how you know. Okay. It's not an exhaustive list, but those are some ways to know when you are being pulled out of flow by someone else. And if you start to uh, strengthen by learning how to hold your space and releasing your distortion patterns, you'll be able to hold your space more and more effectively so that if you're with that person again, and it's actually kind of a good measure, as much of a pain in the ass those people can be, it's a really good like measure of how you're doing in a way, because I've had people who said, you know, um, who start doing frequency work and they tell me like literally when this person calls me who's very close to me, my family, I start to shake because it provokes such anxiety in my body, like from seeing their phone number appear on my phone. Okay, whoa, that is someone who's really in that person's space. And then what is awesome is as she got stronger and started to use the tools, and actually for her it was mastery momentum, the tools, the 6 core essentials. She started practicing those tools and practicing those tools. Literally now, like the phone will ring. She can either put it on silent or she'll take the call and she doesn't get freaked out. She can literally hold her space with that person. To the outside world, is this a big deal? No. To her, is it massive? Absolutely. Okay. So my point simply is that you have within your grasp the tools to help you to empower yourself to be able to hold your space so that you know when someone's in your space, when you're being pulled out, when you are allowing yourself to be pulled out, uh, what it means to be in the center, and how to be in flow from the center of yourself rather than out of your body and floating around out here, which can seem like flow, but really is just disassociation. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful to you. Okay, that was a great question. Okay. So let me see. I'm going
Giveaways.
to, before we get to the GFC, which is next, exciting stuff that I know some of you have been waiting this entire time for. Okay, we're going to do the two giveaways because we didn't get to do them since, well, we weren't able to get online last time. And the time before I forgot because Fiona and I were together doing our new format in a very exciting way. And I completely forgot about the giveaways to my chagrin. So anyhow, what we're going to do, the giveaways, just so you know, are it's free access to the upcoming deep dive, which is appropriately getting into flow, which universal flow, rest and recuperation. So most of us aren't aware of the massive, infinite force of universal life force that is there for us all the time because we think we have to get it all done, right? We have our to-do list, we have everything we have to do, we don't have enough time, and we're racing against the clock to get everything done. And all we have is our willpower, our life force, our urgencies, pressure, whatever it is, sense of obligation to get it all done. However, if we start to link into universal life force, all of a sudden we realize, oh my gosh, we're supported by this infinite force that we're intrinsically connected to, that we forget all the time in our illusion of separateness. So that is the deep dive that is coming up starting tomorrow, I believe. So we're going to give away two of these. So Chris is going to scroll. Kim Castle. All right, Kim Castle. All you need to do is write into info@Spherical Luminosity and let them know that you are the very lucky winner of this deep dive, and they will grant you access. Okay, we're gonna do one more, and Chris is gonna do his magical scrolling, and I'm closing my eyes to make it even more fair. And stop. Volo, Volo Rad. Vola Rad. Whoever Vola Rad is. Please write into info@sphericalluminosity.com to claim your free gift. All right. So that was exciting. Giveaways are fun. All righty. So we are now going to move into the GFC. Yep. I'm just going to switch the view. Yep. There we go. We're learning all these fancy new screenshots. Anyhow, so we're going to jump into the GFC now. Okay. All right, party people. Here we go. Settling in. Let's rise together. Becoming aware of your body, please. And as you become aware of your body, noticing the space between your eyebrows, noticing if they're a little squinched up or if they're relaxed, it's relaxed and soft and at ease. Becoming aware now of the backside of your skull, all the way down your back body to the space between your shoulder blades. So, as you become aware of this upper back part of the body, noticing what it's touching, noticing if there's any holding, And if there is, allowing the space to soften. Good. Nice. And for a moment, please become aware of your breath. Just noticing it at first, without changing it. Just noticing how your breath is right now. It's not a judgment. It's just, oh, okay. Whew, I've been breathing a little shallow there. And then whenever you are ready, allowing the breath to drop deeper into the body. To take up more space. Good. Being aware of the rib cage as it expands and contracts. Noticing the rise and the fall of the belly. And if there is a rise and fall of the belly with the breath. Yeah, good. Bringing your attention now, please, to your heart space. Right in the center of your chest, in your nipple line. Asking yourself the question, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source? Pulling your frequency resonance higher. There we go. Excellent. Bringing your attention now, please, to the heart space. And to the right shoulder blade on the back side of the body. So again, that's the heart space and the right shoulder blade, please. Good. So to enter flow, first we need to release this belief that it's a state that you have to try to achieve that's out there somewhere that you're trying to put yourself into. Okay? Like it's, like I said, outside of you. I know it seems like an odd distinction, but it carries with it the distortion of elusiveness, not able to attain it, oppressed to have it. Okay, yearning, which indicates scarcity of or lack. Release all this. Mhm. Yep, really good. Okay. Imagining, sensing, feeling, becoming aware of. The heaviness of all of this mental projection and hope. Dissolving, crumbling away from you. Good. There we go. Excellent. Bringing your attention right into that center of that solar plexus, please. So your solar plexus is between your belly button and the base of your sternum. So right in the center of that, wherever that is for you. Yeah. Pulling us firmly into the center of the 0 point. More firmly into the 0 point of space and time. There we go. A little scatter happening. There we go. There we go. Good. Bringing your attention now, please, to the center of your pineal gland and right into the center of your heart space. So your pineal gland is imagining a sphere right in the center of your brain. and your heart space. Well, it's right in the center of your chest, your nipple line. So putting a hand on the heart space, perhaps over your forehead, if that's helpful for you. So the mind has a very interesting addiction, and it will want to pull you into the future, okay, especially if worry is involved. It's just the mind likes to do this, right? And so we live in makeup land, okay, where it hasn't happened yet. It's you have no idea what's going to happen. You think you do, but you create because of your worry this scenario in the mind. All right, hang on. Let's pull you out of that distortion. Bringing you firmly into present moment. Imagining, sensing, feeling, or being aware of the brilliant blackness of the void, space of absolute nothing and absolute potential, of dissolution. Good. Bring your attention into the heart space, please. Deep into the center of the heart. So, oddly, even if we know something is better for us, like coming present into the body, we'll do all kinds of things to distract ourselves from it, not pay attention. It's like we're throwing a little temper tantrum to avoid being present. But in your flavor of it, death scrolling on Instagram, whatever it is, releasing the resistance, avoidance to discomfort with, coming into the present moment, which means, by the way, being aware of and accepting whatever emotion's happening, which for some of us can be hard. There we go. There we go. Good. Nice. Bring your attention from the heart space all the way straight down through to the groin, straight line right down through the center of the body. There we go. So when we go into flow, usually there's an expansion through the heart space. Because we fall in love with what is. Now, it may not feel like that in the moment, but that's what's happening. With the divine perfection of it all. So even if that feels like a far off emotion for you, expanding the heart space. There we go. Really good. Really good. Lovely. Bring your attention now, please, to the xiphoid process. And about 3 inches or 7 centimeters directly beneath it down towards the belly button. Clearing out the pain body. Clearing out the pain body. Because your pain body has a memory of you before the frequency work was done, which slows down integration of the new or higher resonating or vibrating version of self. It takes a couple of seconds. There we we go. Excellent. Everyone take a deep breath in. Hold it for 3 seconds before releasing it with some sound. Huh. And then when you're ready, blinking your eyes open, looking at something inanimate. All right, guys. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you on our next YouTube Live. Bye for now.